Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
When I was young, there was a man that I'd see in the living room every day, in the corner like a silhouette. I couldn't make out his facial features. His head was very round. His eyes were large, black, and could have been sunglasses. His hat was a black, wide-brimmed gaucho. The top was flat, and the brim was as wide as his shoulders. He would observe me. The first time I saw him, I described him to my mother, and the reaction was so passive that I figured he was harmless. She said, "That's just your imagination." I didn't know what the word meant, so I called him imagination. He would observe me as I played with toys on the floor, or while I watched TV on the couch. I never felt any sense of malice or danger. Rather, he was a part of the living room, the couch, the bookshelf, the man in the hat, the telephone table. He wasn't something I'd see out of the corner of my eye. If I looked in his exact direction, I'd see him sitting, watching me. I could focus on his hat, face, or body in the same way I could focus on any other tangible object. Even so, I was never afraid. This went on for years, though he eventually left. Over the years, he has gone from a visceral experience to simple childhood whimsy until the other night, when some friends and I were talking about weird stuff from our childhood, and I brought this up. This spurred my curiosity, and I ended up doing some internet searches. What I discovered blew me away. Do a search for the Hat Man yourself. Not only was I not the only one to report this entity, but there are hundreds of reports out there from all corners of our world. Have any of you been visited by the Hat Man?
Incoming wall of text. I'll try my best to keep this into a coherent paragraph structure easy on the eyes, but I can't promise anything. I moved into a house in the middle of August last year. At first, the house did not seem different or anything out of the ordinary. When we first moved in, there were 5 of us in the 3-bedroom house, 2 couples, and 1 single friend. Around November of that year, odd things began to happen. My roommates began to tell me that they had been hearing things at night when nobody else was awake, me being the rational, scientific asshole. I pulled the classic unbeliever and did just that, not believing. However, a few weeks in, me and my girlfriend were the only people home. Hear what sounded like a loud crash coming from deeper in the house. I believed something simple like a shampoo bottle had come loose and fell into the bathtub, but she, however, believed that the sound came from roommate M's room. Upon inspection, she was correct. Their wall mirror had dislodged itself and flipped the mirror side up and scooted about a foot into the door entrance, blocking the way in. This was odd, but I chalked it up to something like small tectonic vibrations or the movings of an old house. Later that day, however, I would be tested on that. Only a few hours later, after my girlfriend had gone to work, M called to bullshit on his break. I casually told him about his mirror, just noting it was odd and I should tell him. After a bit, we got off the phone, and that's when the first series of odd events began. Shortly after the phone call, 5 minutes or so, I heard my car go off, as if my electric car key lock had been pushed. My car locks and then does a small honk. Me thinking I had sat on them or something else, got up to look for them. Not seeing them, I turned around to look elsewhere. As soon as I saw them on my desk a good 6 feet from me, my car horn again went off. Me even being at an angle now to witness my car lights flick on and off in confirmation. Me being again rational and grounded. Simply thought my car key battery must be dying and thus surging. However, to this day it has never occurred again. The batteries have never been replaced, and it still works fine. Shortly after this, I realized it was time to take a shower to get ready for a lunch with a friend. Being a little paranoid, or just in lack of company, I decided to bring our dog, 50-pound German Shepherd aged 7 months at the time, with me and give him a little shower as well. After taking the shower and exiting, I noticed while drying myself off that I could hear the water pump running, as if water was still on somewhere. I left the bathroom with the dog following me and went into the hallway. Sure enough, I could hear the water running somewhere down the way. Walking down the hall, I confirmed the sound coming from my kitchen. The second before turning the corner, I heard the valve in the sink hard stop, the water behind it making that pressure noise as the plate interrupted the flow hard. Coming around the corner, water was to be found on the kitchen floor and all over the sink, which had nothing in it. A little freaked out at this point and wanting to leave the house, I began to go back down the hall to my room, wanting to get dressed and leave. My dog did not follow me though, which at the time I did not find odd, but now I do. As I got within 5 feet of my room door, it shut closed in my face, even making the click of the door latch catching. Funny is the fact that the AC in that room actually blew the door open and wouldn't ever close it. Me, at this point being afraid, but having to prove something to myself, reached over and opened the door anyways, finding nothing. Strangely enough, the room itself felt fine. However, when I entered into the hallway again, I stopped feeling scared. Instead, I felt overcome with anger or rage, feeling I was being played with. I felt the desire to harm whatever it was, all the way until I left. After that day, no events happened for a few weeks beyond my roommate's normal complaints about night noises that I never witnessed. Later, though, I would come home one day to find my roommate Jay seemingly sleeping on the couch. However, he got up after a few minutes and commented on the noise outside, like he could hear a radio broadcaster talking through the wall but could not make out the words. I told him that there was no sound outside, as I'd just come home and heard nothing from out there, but in a way of support, decided to go out and check. As the first picture shows, we had a wraparound veranda that stopped halfway to our back fence. It was nighttime, just after sundown at this point, and walking around the veranda to view into our neighbor's window to try and discern if the TV was on or something to make noise, I noticed what I at first thought was moss or mildew on the side of the house. A large black spot on the house wall taller than me and all the way to the ground. I am 6'4". Surprised, I quickly came to realize it was in fact a shadow. However, as the diagram shows, albeit crudely, I could not find out where the shadow was coming from, and I took a step off the veranda, inching my hand toward the shadow to try and overlap it, to find the direction from which it was being cast. As soon as my hand came within 3 to 5 inches of the shadow on the wall, it rapidly sunk down to 7 or 8 inches above the ground and shot off towards my backyard, becoming invisible in the darker shadow of my fence. Being startled, I hurried back inside. As soon as I walked inside, before saying anything, Jay asked me if I had heard the sound. As I replied, "No, I didn't," he commented, "Oh, it's pretty weird. It started again when you went outside, and just before you came in, it sounded like it took off towards the back of the house." I was a little stunned, to say the least. This wouldn't be the last time I would see this shadow. The weeks passed by and events began to crop up. Our old roommate M would constantly find our dog locked in his room, and although odd, it was not impossible. Shortly after M and his wife CD became pregnant, and they moved out in January. Shortly after we got a new roommate, JH. We didn't tell him anything about the few odd happenings, but apparently he would find out soon enough. One day after JH had been out partying and not home for a few days, he returned to find his room completely wrecked, wires and cords strewn everywhere and his music equipment topsy-turvy. His bed was up sideways against a wall. I believe I may have a few photos of these I would post later if anyone was interested. He blamed Jay for it, but I came to assure him Jay had been at his mother's house the entire time JH was gone, and I had not done it. In fact, me and my girlfriend had not even heard any noises to think something had occurred inside that room at all. Later on, this same thing would happen 2 or 3 more times while he was not home, all the while nobody else was ever able to even notice it had happened. The list of events that happened began to rapidly increase as the months went on. Once around 4 a.m., me and Jay were watching a movie in the den while everyone else was asleep. Suddenly, multiple giant crashes occurred from the opposite den across from the kitchen. The crashing lasted almost an entire 30 seconds, sounding as though every dish in our house was being thrown at the tile floor. However, upon inspection, there was absolutely nothing we ever found broken in that room or any other. Later on, I would be awake by myself reading late one night. No wind or rain or anything else. I heard the front door knob jiggle a little bit, and assuming JH was outside coming home from drinking after work, I got up to let him in so he wouldn't have to use his key. His key was a bad copy and caused him no end of trouble with the lock. As I reached the door, the jiggling stopped. I flicked on the porch light and undid the bottom lock. Possessed by some fortunate insight, I decided to look down the peephole, finding nobody on the other side, and my hand on the top lock about to open it. The bottom handle slowly turned all the way and released itself, springing back into place not once but twice. I quickly took my hand from the deadbolt and re-locked the bottom lock, horrified. Running into my own room where my girlfriend was asleep, I tossed aside the curtain used to block the sun on our back door and locked the deadbolt as quickly as I could, seemingly just in time as the bottom door knob repeated the same action as the front door knob, slowly turning in place and then released with a click. Locking that door in place, I left the room, unable to stay in the dark with that door any longer, and retreated back into the hall. Going back into the living room where the light was brightest, I remembered we had one other door into the house, the door that leads into the garage from which you could enter and exit. Quickly scrambling up, I rushed into the kitchen, seeing the doorknob turn just as the previous ones before it. I shoulder slammed the door before it should even have possibly opened, and tossed the lock on, not even realizing until later that the only way this lock would have been able to turn is if something had opened the large mechanical garage door and came inside. The sound would have been loud enough to alert me anywhere in the house. Paranoid, I stayed awake that entire night and told nobody about what had happened till much later. A few weeks later, JH had got a steady girlfriend and had been bringing her home. They would listen to dubstep and eventually leave. This was rinse and repeated just about every morning. However, this one day, me and my girlfriend were home, and sure enough, about 10 a.m., JH's door opened up. Sound of footsteps crossed the hall to the bathroom. Bathroom door opens, shuts. Few minutes after toilet flushes. Water turns on. Water turns off. Door opens, closes. JH's door closes. This would rinse and repeat throughout this entire day from 10 a.m. until about 7 p.m. We just figured they were having some freaky drug-induced delusion, who knows, and the cycle was random. Wasn't at a specific time that I was aware of or anything like that. Just that this cycle happened about 7 times in the 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. time span. However, about 7:30, just minutes after the last time we heard this event happen, JH came through the front door. We both jaw dropped. Asking him where he had been, he told us he had stayed at a friend's last night and had not been home at all. Even having pictures to prove he was at a bar just an hour prior to coming home, we were shocked. We never figured out how those sounds were made if they were not from him. Small things began to go missing in the house. Nothing large enough to be noticed or substantial enough to say it was paranormal, but just odd. Things would turn up later in places they shouldn't. An example is my girlfriend's pearl necklace we found in the back of the AC closet when I went to change the filters. I can't say for sure if people didn't do this, but it sure was odd. Eventually, though, things got a little more devious. We had acquired a second dog that spring, and he was a super fraidy cat. He refused to be anywhere but outside or in his kennel at almost all times. If people were not around, he would just lay in his kennel all day, though not paranormal or even odd. What is odd, however, is that despite his unrelenting behavior to not venture outside these general safety zone limits, we began to notice that despite not having a doggy door or any other viable way outside of the house or into the garage, the dog would end up scratching the garage door from the inside. I mean, he would be in the house or in his kennel in our room 1 minute. You would go into the living room. 10 minutes later, you would hear bumping and scratching from inside the garage. You would open it. Dog would bolt out of there. Send shivers right down your spine. Still no idea how it was at all possible. Eventually, when summer was dying down, we decided to move for financial reasons. This is when what I would deem as the most personal event occurred. Just a few days before we had finished packing the house. By this point, JH had moved out and Jay was out at his mother's for the night. I took the dogs to the backyard while I was on the phone with Jay. We were talking about some irrelevant stuff, and after a while the phone call ended. Putting the phone in my pocket and tossing a stick for the dogs to get, as they ran far from me, I noticed just a simple sound. A leaf hitting the pine needles, something to that effect. Nothing paranormal, just a normal ambient sound. However, it prompted me to look over in its direction. What I saw sent the hairs on my neck straight up. In the corner of my fence, around my same height and a slighter build, was a man. Solid black with no visible face, almost like he was wearing a hoodie. The head part just rounded up with no sign of a neck, and his what I can assume were hands, curled into fist, though I could discern no fingers from my point of view, standing almost bowed out in the corner of my fence facing me. It made no movements and no sounds. I called the dogs back to me and backpedaled onto the back porch towards my door. The dogs not once looked at this thing, and I lost sight of it around a fridge we had standing outside on the back porch. I opened the door, still looking out towards it, and never saw movement, and went inside, the dogs running in. As I closed the door, I again moved the curtain to the side to get to the handle. As the curtain moved, I could see it, exact same stance, standing 5 feet from my door, unmoving, the porch light shining straight at it. Still no visible features, the head just a rounded shape, no fingers or toes or visible clothing. It was almost like a solid onyx statue cut in relative human proportions. I stared it down for what seemed like 20 seconds, but could have only been as little as 4. My heart was pounding, and I let the curtain fall back, cutting it off from my vision. The door handle didn't move or turn, and I got the fuck out of that room. Later that night, I had to call a friend and talk to him. We decided to go out to a bar and blew off steam. Leaving the house, I swear I saw it by the passenger side of the car, but upon a double take, it was not there. After the bar, I came home and watched some movie, realizing it was getting late. 5 a.m.-ish. I decided to try and sleep, having pushed the thing from earlier out of my mind already, and wanting sleep. I retreated down the hall to my room, shutting off the lights as I went but leaving my TV for some light as I went down the hall. It has an auto-off timer. And reaching my door, I catch a shape out of the corner of my eye. Sure enough, there it is, in the same shape and unmoving self as before, right in front of my front door. Thinking that maybe if I turn a light onto it, something would happen. I quickly flipped the hall switch to turn on the living room lights, yet it was to no avail. The light shone out over it, and it stayed still, not moving. That's when I realized it was so odd, because it was just that. There was no respiration. It was literally unbreathing. Unnerved by this sudden realization, I quickly opened my room door and shut it hard, locking it behind me and jumping into the bed, laying awake until daylight was coming through the cracks of the door before finding sleep. I never had anything happen again after that, although I admit we left not even a week later. I was unable to bring myself to tell Jay and my girlfriend what had happened until after we had left that house. That was back in August of this year, and since then nothing new has occurred in our new place. I have driven by our old house a few times and know it is being rented out. I wonder if the new occupants have seen anything yet, but I haven't brought myself to ask. Thanks for hearing me out, X. If you have any questions, I guess, just ask away.
Are you kidding me? For years I've had this one thing that happened to me as a child that I'd always tell everyone about. I'm not sure if there was a hat though. Window on the opposite end of my room, trees and bushes. I'm trying to sleep at night. I close my eyes and wake up at some point and see what I thought was a giant owl, like sitting right on the window. Then it started to change, like the black parts moved around. It eventually looked like a big dark gray balloon with one large black hole in the center that was growing with a strange anger. I just saw there, with my nose under the cover, staring right at it with the most tremendous terror I've ever felt. I was barely wanting to breathe to not make noise. I was blazingly fixated on it, watching it change and grow and shrink. I eventually just woke up, don't remember falling asleep. I'm not fucking kidding, this is not bullshit. I live in Australia, and this was in my mum's house, my old home. I can share one other thing. My sister and her boyfriend both woke up to a grainy static vision and an ennui, Indian, Aztec-looking old woman made of shadow standing against the wall, and they screamed and it was just gone after the next blink. That's about all I have. But I'm telling you this. From Australia, I've seen something.
Look up Heidi Hollis and her discussions about the Hat Man. Some info. Paranormal researcher Heidi Hollis discussed shadow people and provided new information on the Hat Man, a form of evil incarnate. In discussing her research into shadow people, she said the phenomenon can take many forms, including big, hairy, shadowy spiders, cats, streaks, clouds, or instances where a head is directly connected to a set of broad shoulders, and at times you can see red glowing eyes. Hollis noted that she has received numerous reports of malevolent shadow people, saying, "The most common physical contact that these shadow people do to people is jump on their chest and choke them." Hollis also talked about the Hat Man, a being that she originally had thought was another incarnation of the shadow people, but was overwhelmed with letters from people insisting that it was solid. She described the creature as having a Zorro-type hat. He wears a three-piece suit and a cape or a long trench coat. Other attributes ascribed to the Hat Man included occasionally wearing a watch that dangled from his hip, having either a goatee or being clean-shaven, and possessing glowing red or solid black eyes. Based on her correspondence with witnesses to the Hat Man, Hollis speculated that the being is the devil. She recounted a story from a soldier stationed at a haunted base in Germany who saw the Hat Man in his mirror. The soldier asked who he was, and it responded, "I'm Scratch." Hollis explained that Scratch was an old term used for the devil. She also told the story of a man who had attempted suicide and woke up in the hospital to find the Hat Man sitting at his bedside. The being then said, "I almost had you," and disappeared. Sleep tight, /X/.
That's fucking creepy. I saw Hat Man when I was a kid. I woke up at about 3 a.m. I was very lonely at the time. I saw a guy in a long trench coat and a hat in my room, a fedora. I was terrified of it, this man, made out of shadow. I also noticed my bed covers were off, something no child ever does. I pretended to be asleep though, and watched it from under my eyelids. If I looked too long at it, straight on, he'd jump towards me. Not actually jumping, but like he was glitching. 1 second he'd be 6 feet away, the next 4 feet away. If I closed my eyes, he'd go back to being 6 feet away. In what felt like an epic battle over the course of hours, but was probably 15 minutes, I managed to snake my arm across to my duvet and cover myself, and hid until sunlight bathed my room in light again. The only time I saw a Hat Man, but I saw a shadow person when I was older. When I was older, I was 16 and had just finished my GCSEs. I was surfing the internet, probably 4chan. I glanced out my window where the garden developed into an orchard, about 20 meters away. In the shadows, I thought I could see a man-shaped shadow. I just thought it was one of my parents and ignored it. I decided to have a nap and had a dream where I was looking out of my window with the shadow man jumping closer like the Hat Man. He eventually came through my window and seemed to say to me, I don't know. It wasn't words, it was more ideas that formed in my head. But it seemed it was saying, I understand how you tick. You're like a mechanical clock to me. I can pull out a cog or wheel and make you stop ticking. I was terrified. I summoned all my willpower and told it to leave, that this was my house and my property. He just laughed and reached out towards me. Then a beam of sunlight fell through the window, and he disappeared. I woke up to a ringing phone, and my mum was in tears, telling my grandfather had just passed away. I like to think the beam of sunlight was him saving me.
Not a wood story, but I've never heard of Hat Man or Hooded Man until just now, and have something about that. I was a Marine living in Japan, shared a barracks room with 2 other guys and had a nightmare that wasn't too scary. I was in a hotel room with friends from home. They are freaking out, saying we have to get out. They start jumping out the window. Second story. I look outside and it is a parking lot. Across the parking lot is a dark figure. My dream zooms in movie style super fast to the dark figure. It is a man wearing a jean jacket with a hoodie, hood up. Under the hood it is too dark to see his face. Dream ends. I wake up in a cold sweat, scared out of my mind. I calm down after a little bit and just looks around. Everyone else is asleep. Let out a breath of relief. Just as I'm about to put my head back on the pillow, someone whispers in my ear, "I see you." I got scared as fuck and woke everyone else up. I felt like a bitch, but that was the single scariest thing that's ever happened to me.
Here is a story from when I was in high school, 12th grade. I lived near a woods my entire life. I used to go to it every day on my bike and play on its playground. Have not been in the woods in about 5 to 6-ish years. So I decided to go for a stroll through the deer trails and whatnot. Before I can even breathe, I feel like something is not right, but I ignore it. About 20 minutes deep into the woods on my walk, find a really big rock, so I decide to climb on top of it, not recognizing it from when I was younger. Sit on the rock for about 5 minutes or so, and keep walking. Here is where shit gets fucked up. I keep walking and I start to hear footsteps around me. First I assume animals. More footsteps can be heard. Now I'm thinking people. Look around and shout out hello really loud. Nothing. Yell hello one more time, and a faint whisper in my ear. Hello. It has been a while. My heart sinks. I turn around and there it is, all my fears in one form. I used to call them shadow men when I was younger. I had not seen them in years and pretty much forgot everything about it. I start booking it as fast as I could. Get to that big rock and jump on top of it and fall off and break my leg. I crawled under the lip of the rock and watched as this shadowy figure phased around the area towards where I ran. I called my buddy to come and get me. I was not moving. I used to have nightmares and wake up to these shadow people in my room. They have no real noticeable traits other than the tallest one who would wear a kind of Western-style hat. I hate that woods. I hate fucking shadow people, and most of all, I hate breaking bones.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.